Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Zombie Train. This is episode 245, the final Converting Coaches. This is Converting Coaches number 8, talking about the Hydro Lab, which is probably the coach I know the least about, if I'm going to be completely honest. Not only was I not really part of, I was never part of the build team, which was generally the people that were working on the different coaches themselves, but I know nothing about that field. It belonged to a woman who we picked up sort of in the backwoods of Connecticut by the name of... crap. I forget her name. She was this, Russian woman, and that was sort of her field. That was what she knew how to do, and she was growing stuff. She was living on her own, growing stuff in a little greenhouse she had, and she was starting to... I don't think she was really running low on supplies. That's not the impression that I got from her. It more felt like she just wanted to go somewhere, and she stopped us because we were just running down the tracks at a not a high speed. We were just sort of cruising down the tracks near her house, I guess, or whatever, wherever she was. And she flagged us down and said that she wanted to come aboard. She'd heard about us. And she wanted to, she could provide food for the train. And, we hesitated initially because that's kind of a high, that's quite a proposition to make that, I can make all the food for, 30 people. And I hesitated. Like I said, we brought her on board anyways because she wasn't an imminent threat. And she immediately said, do you have any space that I can occupy? And we said, well, we got this coach that's sort of rusting out and gross. It's towards the back of the train. I'm not sure what you want to do with it. And she's like, I'll take it. We said, okay. If you need the build team, they can work on it. They can help you work on it. Just tell them what you need. And so that was sort of the last that I heard of it in terms of administrative functions. I didn't really have to do anything after that because she seemed, or she apparently was, very capable of directing the build team to get her what she wanted. So she ended up building these racks. That's the major thing I saw. These racks with water flowing through them, sort of, I don't know how to describe it, like shelves, and they were stacked. There were there were layers from the floor to ceiling on both sides of the coach, with just a narrow walkway down the middle. Also, we built her a water blister up top of the coach, which proved to be a lot of water and made the coach a little bit top-heavy. We had a couple of incidents where it almost rolled, or just came off because it was too much, and that was not good, and she was very upset about that. But there was really nothing we could do about it. The solution was to add heavy things to the floor, which made this car probably the heaviest thing we had to tote around. So we had the water blister. The car itself was basically full of water on shelves and plants, and that's where most of our stuff came from. That's where most of our sustenance came from, aside from trading. And it was a significant amount. It was mostly potatoes and carrots and these sort of veggies that you can grow. Every once in a while we were stopped, she would just get out her shovel and start digging up the dirt next to the tracks and taking samples and stuff like that, and I have no idea what she was doing. She also grew a little bit in the way of spices, which I think was a request by the kitchen when she really got moving. But for the most part, she was just growing things with calories. And it was really good because it could supplement our diet, immensely. She wasn't growing wheat, because that's not, too potent, but she grew potatoes and, a side of carrots. Not the potatoes were the biggest thing. If you read The Martian, actually, that's a good thing to point to. If you read The Martian, you'll understand why potatoes are so good, because for what they are extremely sustainable, or they're good sustenance, is what I should say. Not that they're extremely sustainable. They're extremely sustaining. Extremely sustaining. I need to use my words better. So that was sort of her thing, and she kept to that. She actually lived back there. She was one of the only people that had a bed that wasn't in the barracks area. It was just, she lived there, and she just kept to herself. She had a rifle, she had a pistol that were just hers. She had the bed, she had facilities. Like, you needed to give her basically nothing, and she would show up occasionally when she needed something, or when she was going to drop off a whole load of food to the kitchen. And it was really strange, and it was honestly a little bit bewildering, because you'd figure, oh, she's just a recluse. She doesn't talk to anybody or anything. But if you sat down with her, like if she appeared in the diner, as she did sometimes, and you sat down with her, you could have these conversations. She would talk your ear off. Actually, that's how I found out that English is not her first language. And part of it might have been self-consciousness. She always would apologize for English, or apologize for English if something was a little bit off, or she worried something was off. She was a good speaker, though. She was a solid English speaker. Anyways, I digress. That's her, and it, like I said, it contributed to our ability to trade, because she normally kept like a seed stock, and she would regrow certain plants that we had not many seeds of. Or she would specifically grow certain plants that we didn't have many seeds of, so that she could get other seeds, so that she could specifically sell those seeds for people to grow. More specialty plants like tomatoes or cucumber or watermelon or pumpkin, which those latter two were not something that she really had the space to grow, but she attempted it on a couple of occasions. She was a whiz with that kind of stuff. Honestly, I would always be impressed by going back there and seeing how much effort had been put into that stuff. But anyways, the car never looked any better on the outside. The car never got a paint job, which was a little bit strange, but the quasi explanation, the closest thing we garnered to an explanation was, don't replace the outside, don't replace the inside, because stuff happens to this car too much. She would like bust a pipe and she'd get water all over everything, or she'd have to not really bust out a window, but dismantle a window in order to run pipes. At one point, there were literally hoses that were strung along the side of the coach from front to back. I have no idea what they were for, but I presume water, or some other chemical. She was basically building a chem lab there. She would sometimes hijack the rear end of the hospital to make certain chemicals. She was always going on about nitrogen as well. I suppose it would make more sense if I knew more about plants and sort of how to grow plants. I never had a green thumb. I could grow an aloe vera, but it's really hard to kill an aloe vera, so that's why I could grow an aloe vera. I was tempted to take one and put it in the cab, but it would not. I mean, I guess it wouldn't care about the heat. I never really worried about it too much. But every time we encountered like a Lowe's or something, I wanted to say, oh, get me a plant, get me a potted plant. I don't know, just one of those little things to take care of. Here's the other thing, though. Speaking of potted plants and Lowe's and stuff, when you'd go to these Home Depot or home improvement stores, Home Depot type stores, and what you'd end up with, or you'd find these plants that, most of them just died because they just died. It was the way it is. If nobody's watering them, whatever, if they don't have an automated watering system, or even if they do and the water went out, all the plants would just die. But occasionally you'd have one which managed to find a source of sustenance for its little plant self and just went ape. That you would have like whole garden sections that were taken over by the vines and stuff like that, and those were always a little bit spooky to deal with. I got to see one of them. I got to see the first one, which was somewhere in Delaware, I think. I don't remember why we were in Delaware, but they basically said, they basically went out, they found this thing, and they said, holy crap, look at this. Look at this place, it's completely overrun with vines. And so basically half the train left to go and see this this Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever it was. It was some sort of store like that with a garden section. It might have been a Walmart or I don't know. I didn't pay attention to that. I was paying attention to the fact that there were vines that covered basically half the exterior and interior surface. Those kind of stores, though, they got dangerous because all of the... they got dangerous and they started to fade away in terms of dangerousness because it would just be over. But you would accidentally create this sort of ecosystem where you had refrigerator stuff, or refrigerated stuff, and when the refrigerators died, it all would spoil. And basically you just had a biohazard area, and it was gross. You could smell it sometimes from miles away. And it was basically a giant warning, don't go over here. Even though we did sometimes, but it was gross. You would just have whole buildings full of mold. We had respirators and stuff that we would use to look in these buildings sometimes, because a lot of the time it would be like a department store, like a Stop and Shop, a grocery store, where you had all the spoiled stuff, but you wanted to go in there because you wanted to get all the canned goods. And the thing was, if you look at a place and it's grossed, it's all spoiled stuff, and otherwise hasn't been touched, like the smell has kept people away, that probably means that all the canned goods and stuff that's still usable is good. It's still there. So that would be the incentive to go into a place like that, as opposed to a place where that hasn't happened. There weren't really places like that where that hadn't happened, except for places that were very close to major populated areas, and basically got totally everything was taken immediately. So they got gutted by people. But, well, there's tons of other tangents that I could go on, but this woman, and I'm trying to remember her name. I'm trying for the life of me, and I've written about her too, and I don't remember her name. But she was impressive. She did a lot of stuff for the crew, pretty selflessly. I think, like I said, I'm pretty sure that it was almost completely to just get away from where she was. She wanted to sort of make a break for it. I don't know if she was worried about her situation or if she was just bored. But she came to the right place, I guess, because we managed to do that, and then we ended up taking her all over the country, and she actually, right now, she sort of is a roving... The car has gotten a coat of paint. That's right, it has now. Since the official Zombie Train contest has been retired, the car has gotten a coat of paint. And it goes on tour, because she goes on tour, and she shows off the things that she's built or come up with, which she uses to feed all sorts of communities, all the newer communities. So, yeah, it's interesting. It's quite cool. That sort of thing has a legacy. I didn't really mention this episode about what's going on in the video here. We're looking at Under Construction, episode 31, and I was celebrating a little bit. We're coming to the end of the episode here, and I was celebrating the release of 3713 by running 3713 down the coastline. And yeah, so we can just sit back and watch this at 8 times speed, or I can, 3713 was a backbone for the northern New England, essentially. I almost said effectively either way. But just because it was an engine that could pull a lot and do a lot, and I'm not even sure what it's necessarily doing now. It's just hanging out, not used as much. Steamers aren't really used as much these days. Post Zombie Train Incorporated, post all that stuff. But if you want to see this in real time, you want to hear me talk about that stuff, not that stuff specifically, but the stuff that I'm talking about in that video. Mostly I'm just gushing. Go check that out. It'll be under construction, come out at the same time. And keep the questions flowing, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you more next week. Trainman out.